Okay, so up next, talking about targeted outreach outside the urban center, which kind of fits. We have Jonathan and Samuel. So Jonathan, I don't want to try to say your last name, is the support coordinator for the Men's Health and Wellness Program at AIDS Vancouver Island. While he grew up in the Lower Mainland, he spent his post-secondary years in Southern Ontario. His post-secondary background has primarily been in adolescent psychology and social work. During his studies to become a social worker, he had the opportunity to take a placement at an AIDS service organization in Ontario. This created a passion to work within and support a community that he is deeply connected to. And Samuel is the program coordinator for the Men's Health and Wellness Program at AIDS Vancouver Island. He was born and raised on Vancouver Island and feels deeply rooted to the varied rural queer community. His academic experience in both anthropology and sociology has allowed him to view the health and wellness of queer men through a research-based, socially and culturally defined professional lens. Meanwhile, his experience in the grassroots community activism has taught him that health, equity, and comprehensive care for queer men can only be found through collective action, community awareness, and comprehensive resource sharing. He believes in the meaning of research and action, and that is what brings him to the Gay Men's Health Summit today.
I am. Oh, yeah, of course.
Hi, everybody. We've already had our introduction, so we're just going to jump right in.
Yeah.
So, we're here to talk about our targeted outreach program that functions sort of outside of an urban center. So we're stationed in Victoria, BC, but we actually cover Victoria, BC all the way to Port Hardy, which is at the other end of the island. So our program covers actually majority rural areas, and then several like semi-large cities. So, yeah.
Okay, no, I am a active person. I'll point and everything. So entering into our area, as in every other. Sorry, area. Have a problems of phobia, transphobia, heavy isolation, stigma. There isn't any centralized hub, such as him, community, health centers targeting MSM in our area, and also tons of people over that whole island. No, it's though it isn't as dense as some of our urban.
We also cover the Gulf Islands
in
that as well. So Vancouver Island as well as the Gulf Islands. So as well, we have minimal contact between HIV positive folks and HIV negative folks. That's sort of a cleavage within our community that is come to the attention of our program, I think, over the years, as well as there's really polarized levels of education, political involvement, and healthcare access. And I think that really ties into what we talked about this morning in regards to health literacy, that there's a lot of sort of disparities in who has knowledge and who has access to knowledge, and in what way. As well, we have lots of pockets of various queer community folks that have very little overlap. So there's a very politicized student movement that stays close to the universities, and then there's a large population of folks living with HIV who stay within their own circles. And so there's lots of different groups that don't have a lot of opportunities to overlap, something that we are hoping to remedy.
Yeah. No, entering in to our program, other programs that offer offering pretty awesome programs. So how come I try to pop up something totally separate, totally new. So
Yeah, so as you can see here, we sort of have just a very brief list of sort of different programs and organizations, as well as resource source locations for MSM, gay, bi, men's materials that sort of exist within the sphere of working within an aid service organization, but as well as sort of working in the queer community. So we've got Health Initiative for Men, which runs a lot of great programs, Community, AIDS Committee of Toronto. They all have a breadth of programming, as well resources from Rainbow Health Ontario, Katie, Pacific AIDS Network, Gay Men's Sexual Health Ontario, the Transgender Health Information Program for the province of British Columbia, and of course CBRC.
Oh yeah. So how come? Sorry. Outside of our region, it's a pretty urban, high population. Have areas such as Davies, a church, whoever, and have health health care providers who are on average up on the queer health. However, over in our pocket, it's
so we're dealing with a slightly different dynamic than a lot of these large urban-based programs. So particularly we're working in a lot of rural areas. We're working in a lot of sparsely populated areas, and by sparsely populated, I mean overall population as well as gay, bisexual, MSM population. In addition, again, sort of no queer neighborhoods, no queer hub, no main space where you can go to, such as Church Street in Toronto or Davies Street, where you can sort of find the queer presence. As well, healthcare providers with little to no training, and this is across the board on Vancouver Island, very few healthcare providers with training in general queer issues. So that's creating a bit of a almost a feeling of inability to access certain kinds of healthcare for individuals that feel they have unique and diverse questions that will not only be not addressed, but also possibly create a very strong stigmatization within the working with healthcare providers.
After all of our hunting out other programs, the right acts, such as towel talk programs that him totally outright programs on a whole offered in other areas weren't something our MSM were able to access. So we ended up starting off as something totally on our own and separate and new. So
Okay, so sort of our program creation steps. So we kind of laid this out about how we were going to go about trying to take some of those great ideas that are existing in other communities and sort of find out how they could be fit together to be applicable in a rural environment of many cities over a lot of space and sort of a very widespread population on the island and of the Gulf Islands. So the first step was to do some research, as we sort of already talked about what's already out there. What are people doing? How are they engaging with men? How are they having these conversations around sexual health, harm reduction, testing, and just seeing what was on the table, which is, as you saw previously, a fairly extensive list. So the next step was then to sort of survey our community for feedback for existing programs and requested programs. So what is already out there? Because our program is probably the principal queer men's health program, or the only one on Vancouver Island, the Gulf Islands. But there are other groups that are doing sort of little smaller steps. So we wanted to see who's doing what and how are they doing it? And is there a way that we can work with them to fortify those things, or do we need to offer that in a different context through what we had? So that was a big important step, to just what's already existing, because we don't want to overlap and waste resources in an area that's already being covered, right? So our third step was to utilize a logic model for like every facet of what we do. So at AIDS Vancouver Island, in our education department where we're housed, everything comes down to a logic model. A logic model being something that can be replicated. If you have it laid out, you can hand someone a logic model and they can take your program and take it somewhere else. Because our hope was that if we had some success and kept really good track of what we're doing, how we're doing it, numbers, all the stats, everything we needed, that if it was successful, other people might be able to utilize it in other contexts. And finally, we just had to lay out a timeline. So what are we looking at, and how long are we looking at doing it for, and how feasible are these pieces? So how much can we do in the first year, the second year, the third year, right? So that was a really important piece, as well as pacing, because certain pieces are going to build on one another.
okay, so
It's me.
I'm sorry.
So, just to continue on. So community feedback, like what are the men in our community saying? So these are some of the principal things that have been coming up in our community from our clients and the diverse men that we serve. So one, a need for diverse programming that allowed for a variety of engagement options. So just online, not going to work. Just bar interventions, not going to work. Just support groups, not going to work, right? Or just social programs, not going to work. So men wanted a diverse array. So the inclusion of technological innovation to reach remote and reclusive folks. So we have a wide sweeping island. We're not centralized in that. We're actually at one far end. And so how do we go about connecting with men across the island? Because I can't travel every day and drive Victoria to Port Hardy. Like, I'm not going to do like an 11-hour drive every single day. It's just not possible. So how do we fortify some relationships and keep some of those things going and offer some resources in an online space, which is something our program has never historically done. As well, programming that provided educational opportunities on emergent issues in queer men's health. So not the same old rhetoric of wear a condom, but I want to know if I can get PEP or PrEP on Vancouver Island. Is that a possible thing? I want to talk about fisting. Where can we have a conversation about that? Because I think there's a lot of education that's put out there in regards to sexual health in the men's community that on our island, because our healthcare providers are not always up to par on what's going on in the queer community, a lot of people are feeling like they don't know where to go and how to get that new information that's coming forward. And finally, initiatives that encourage intergenerational opportunities for community, because there's a big split between younger queer men and older queer men in our communities, which is, I think, especially after being at last year's summit, it was a big conversation piece then, and I think it's going to be an ongoing conversation piece about getting sort of these intergenerational cohorts into one space, and how do we go about doing that in a way that feels safe and accessible for everybody.
hoped to have a pointer, but I don't.
Oh, is there a button on there?
Is a
Top.
Oh, awesome.
Technology's
okay. So I pulled sexual health outreach. This applies, and a community building, pull it off of our provincial
Public Health Agency of Canada funds us and gives us a direction on our work plan on where they want us to go.
Yeah, I pulled it off of our logic model off of a P hack, and after talking to all of our MSM and all of our interactions, all of these ended up happening, coming up often. So how is our programmings targeting all of targeting all of it. Sorry, I'll just shut up now. And why can't I click now? No, oh, there we go.
There we go.
Okay.
So, building a logic model. And we just thought we were going to take a picture and we're just going to slap it up there and
just
actually
slap
talk
it
about
there.
it. Because this is where the actual work is getting done here. We could have typed it up and make it look pretty, but this is what you got to do when you're doing this kind of work. So, we based our logic module creation off of several documents produced by United Way that they've released over the last few years. They're actually very Googleable. Type in United Way logic models online. United Way has a great history of sticking with logic models over the last few years and writing out comprehensive manuals, PowerPoints that you can find online about how to write out a logic model and why that's beneficial to you. And so if you're working at an agency that's thinking about creating programs, utilize some of that stuff through United Way. They've made it publicly available. You can go online and look it up, and it works quite well. It's been working really well. So our first step was to draw out a logic model, which took a lot of time and energy and erasing and rewriting and more erasing for the entire program with this main goal in mind. So the logic model is an opportunity for you to take what you've got at your disposal and what you want to achieve and create sort of a linear, sometimes they're done circular, the shape is up to you, create a pathway to find your way from what you're going to start with and where your end goal is going to be. So our end goal is to improve quality and accessibility of community health promotion, HIV and HCV prevention, and support services for those living with and vulnerable to HIV and HCV. Right? So pretty straightforward, direct from our mandated work plan, but how we fill this in is up to us, right? So yeah, this is just like one of several logic models. This is for our main outreach crew, and then each facet of that crew has its own logic model. In addition, all our other programs have their own logic model. So if anyone wants to talk to us after about like this kind of stuff, please feel free to do so. We'd happily share that information with folks.
And I'm also passing over
Over time?
No.
Okay.
Ask us after, happily talk about it. However,
Are you?
it's a time.
Can you go back for 1 second just to quickly go over
sure.
it? So we developed a 3-year plan.
Yeah.
So basically, 3-year plan is phase 1, getting our outreach team together. So doing the intake, starting to train them, as well as the creation of the program. Year 2, taking those team members that we trained, bringing in more folks, utilizing those team members to do some leadership and peer support pieces within that, as well as creating an online outreach program. Year 3, bringing it over, expanding it across the entire island in a very purposeful, solidified, like launch style fashion, and then utilizing our volunteer team members to do the online shifts. Okay, go.
Okay, and I'll pass it off to
Sure.
you. Sorry.
So recruitment in our community, because there's not actually a lot of folks that are taking sort of spearhead positions, we actually went out into the community and started meeting people when we first got brought on in men's wellness, which is about a year ago, both of us this month. So we've been doing this for about a year. So we went out and met everybody in the community that we possibly could, and any MSM folks or like male identified people that had identified themselves to us as being queer and wanting to be more involved in community, we kept a list. We kept a list of those people, and we went back to those people and generated some conversations around, it sounds like you are really interested and invested in your community, and it sounds like you've got some great leadership qualities. How would you like to be part of a broader discussion about what we can do collaboratively, our agency and the men in the community? So we brought those guys in. We held an info session. We talked to them about like feedback about what we had in mind and what they had in mind, and finding a nice merging point for those pieces. We discussed what the commitment level looks like, because I think a lot of programs have various kinds of levels of commitment, and we wanted to see where they were at. And we also talked about ownership. So, what they would like to feel out of the program, what would help them attach themselves to it and feel a sense of belonging. So we have the AVI Men's Wellness Screw Crew. So these are two of our Screw Crew team members who will talk to you in another minute here.
Okay, so time is
Just
up.
going really fast. Training and leadership. 3 pillars: sexual health and wellness knowledge, individual health and wellness knowledge, and community health and wellness knowledge. And these facets all working together to create healthier MSM communities.
Bam.
Training and leadership continued. Pretty straightforward. Merged our MWP training with our agency training, as well as specialized outreach training, to get everybody trained in on all the basics they needed to know to get started, as well as ongoing trainings. So in order to stay on Screw Crew, you have to attend 1 new training session per quarter, so that's once every 3 months, which is a minimal expectation, and 1 check-in meeting, as well as however many volunteer shifts you'd like to take. So the requirement is not huge, but if we're hosting 12 sessions a year on new and emerging opportunities, that's at least 4 of the 12 that our participants are taking, and they will repeat out. Like if we're gonna do a PEP 1 this year, next year it'll be like PEP Volume 2, like more information.
Oh yeah, so passing it off.
Hi, so I'm Brett, 19, have been on Screw Crew for 6 months now since it began. And yeah, it's been a great opportunity to get involved in the community, to take an active role in that and make a difference, I guess, just in harm reduction and sexual health. Marshall.
Hi, my name is Marshall, and I'm 25, and I've also been with Screw Crew for 6 months, so since the beginning. And yeah, I've really enjoyed getting connected with the queer men's community, and yeah, there's no real places to go in the community, and so it's great to sort of come together and actually be surrounded in a space outside of the single club that we have in the city for queer folks. Yeah, and also sort of breaking down barriers around sort of taboo topics, and one of my favorite parts is sort of carrying around the dildo in the holster. And like, I'm talking going out to bars, walking down the street, and you can hear all the people like giggling behind you, but it's all parts of bringing awareness to what's going on. And particularly the one standing outside of a club, there's like a huge lineup, probably 20, 30 people, and doing a demo in front of that many people of how to use like an internal condom. Yeah, with this gigantic dildo. So that was really fun. It's just a fun way to volunteer and engage in the community. So
That's us.
yeah, do we want to?
Do you want to?
Ask us after.
Yeah.
Happily and talk about it.
Where we're at, where we're going.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's where we're at.
Yep.
Sorry, guys.
I'm